Oh my God, it's almost one of those tearful moments from Twilight, as it's time for our last speech by Layne. And Skinner is a founder of Exosphere, a learning and problem-solving community building the institutions of the future. Wow, sounds really nice. Skinner, the stage is yours. Show some love. This is our last speaker today.
Okay, if you have ever had a conflict with a boyfriend or girlfriend, could you stand up, please? Any kind of communication conflict with a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband, wife, could you stand up? So we have the monks in this section back here who seem to have just never had one. Ah, there you go. No, everybody. So those of you, no conflicts, no girlfriends at all then? Or, Okay, those of you who have had conflicts with your boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife, how many of you have also had some kind of communication misunderstanding with somebody at work? Raise your hands up like this. Okay. So you can sit down now. This is just sort of a trick to get you to have some blood flowing, but it's also indicative of the fact that our psychological reality is the source of the vast majority of our problems in life. We do not engage with this commonly on a day-to-day basis for reasons that I really genuinely cannot understand. The fact that human interpersonal conflicts drive the vast majority of business failures, by far, number one cause of startup failure is at root conflict between people. Technical problems are usually easy to solve by comparison. How many of you are coders? Coders are always saying, like the technology would be easy if people would just, do what they're supposed to do. And most of the time, we spend our effort marching as far around the problem of other people as we can, rather than trying to understand what's going on. Part of the reason that we have so many conflicts with people is that we don't live in the same world. Have you ever heard somebody say, maybe about you, or you've said about somebody else, they live in their own world? Have you ever heard some phrase like this? Well, the state of affairs is that we all, each of us, live in a completely independent world. And we are in more or less some level of denial about how different the world is that each of us inhabit compared to the world that everybody else inhabits. Even at the most basic level right now in this audience, each of you perceives me standing on this stage differently based on how you're sitting in your chair, where you are, if you are behind one of these trees, if you're in the shade. So, and this is very basic. Your impression of today is going to be different than everybody else's impression. And what I want to help you with today is to give you just a few tools and some language to try to understand some of the patterns of difference in behavior that cause us to live in this fragmented reality, with the hope, the attempt of gluing these fragments together to create not a perfect, seamless whole, but a sort of mosaic of the human spirit, so that we understand why we see the world differently and why we might have persistent conflicts with other people. So, okay, I don't know if they can zoom in on the whiteboard or not, but anyway, yeah, perfect. So, one of the differences between people is whether or not we are oriented temporally, that is in sequences, or spatially, that is in a context. Now, people who have a temporal orientation in life are thinking in sequences of events. Life is mapped basically by this thing happens, then this thing, then this thing. And so tend to operate and organize their map making of reality by thinking in terms of instructions or plans that have steps. Strategies are thought of as, I do this, and then if it goes this way, then I'll move here, and if it goes the other way, I'll move here. A spatial orientation is, on the other hand, looking around in the present moment and navigating in that way. So if you think about literally navigating space using Google Maps, you open your phone and you click on the app, and then there's a map that appears with a blue dot, right? And then there's a field around the blue dot that shows your field of vision. This is very much a spatial orientation about the world. I'm here, this is what I can see. A temporal or sequential orientation is, I'm here in this moment, and then I will be in this other place in the future moment, and I'm trying to organize all of my states of affairs in the meantime to have a more optimal future state of affairs. Now, you can imagine that this might result in very different patterns of communication or preferences. Have you ever been on a vacation with your romantic partner where one of you wants everything to be planned out? You want to know exactly how you're going to get to the airport, get from the airport in the other city to the hotel, and then where you're going to have dinner each night, etc. And the other person says, well, that ruins all of the fun of going on vacation. That sounds like work. I just want to, we'll figure it out when we get there. Anybody ever had one of these kind of experiences on either side of it? Okay, and in a business, you might imagine similarly, somebody who says, well, let's just write some code and see when it breaks, versus, well, no, we need to plan it out. We need to know we're going to build this and then test it and then build this, and then if it goes this way, we'll do that. And then there's a huge conflict. This often happens between business people and coders. This is a very common set of conflicts. And the reason that you might think that these conflicts happen, prior to now is, oh, that person is just stupid. They don't understand that if you do it that way, it won't work. But what you're not accepting is that both sides are saying this. And the reason both sides are saying this is that they're coming at, like they're perceiving the problem from an absolutely opposite perspective. And when we mix this with the approach that we take to making our map of reality, being either objective or subjective, the objective person is concerned about communicatable facts about reality as they think it is perceived by everyone. So somebody who wants concrete evidence that this is true or false, very concerned about the rationality or logic of a certain plan, versus this sort of gut sense or individualized perspective. I can't really explain why I think we should do this, but I know deep down this is the thing we should do. Anybody ever been in one of those communication conflicts before? Anybody ever get really angry at the other one for demanding something that seems so unnatural? Yeah, it's like if you're a subjective person here and saying, I cannot find words for it, but I would put my life on this. And somebody else is saying, no, but you have to put words on it, or I won't listen to you. This is painful. It's like wearing shoes that are 2 sizes too small, and vice versa. Well, what do you want to do? Well, I think we should do this because of this. No, but what do you want? Now, I don't want anything. I'm just trying to look at the facts. Yeah, but you have to want something. You see the debate? And you see why this is going to cause all kinds of perpetual conflict, patterns of conflict, not just isolated incidents. So when we combine these phenomena, we get an even more problematic picture. So I will start down here in the lower left quadrant, and in part, what I'm going to do next, it usually is a little bit jarring for some people, but I discovered that humans are strange in the fact that they're more honest about their shortcomings than they are about their strengths. That people are more able to recognize their negative traits than their positive ones. And the reason for this is that we don't aspire to have more negative traits. So we don't sometimes foolishly imagine ourselves to have negative traits that we don't have. On the other hand, we aspire to take on new positive traits. We wish we could take on those traits, and sometimes we foolishly convince ourselves we already have them. And this is one of the reasons that most of the research in psychological profiling and typing is so inaccurate and flawed, because we're just really bad at self-assessing. So I've tried to create a bit of a model that, and some names that help you to be kind of hopefully humorously honest with yourself about where you might fit. So in subjective space, there's this blue dot on the map, and from the subjective perspective, it's about what the individual wants, feels, and perceives. Not concerned about making that case objective, explaining, putting words to it, but just moving around, seeing what they see, doing what they're going to do, and not really needing to explain it to anybody. So I have nicknamed these people the narcissistic prima donnas. And on the one hand, these people that everybody seems to be magnetically attracted to and really like, but wow, they just think about themselves so much. Anybody know somebody like that? Like, they have lots of friends frequently, or they have a very vibrant life, but they're doing their own thing. In objective space, and it's important in both of these, the principal consideration is about what's happening now, the way things are in the present. And the reason that this is important, and the reason that the prima donna is the way that they are, is that in the now, there's only what I am feeling, wanting, or seeing in the present. So this is why they can do some things that may seem like, wow, like that's going to come back to bite you later. But it's simply not on the radar. It's not a consideration. And similarly, in objective space, the only consideration is maximal precision, being right, making sure that whatever is happening is the right thing to do as it is observed. And it also means communicating in a way that does not take into account any other consideration. So you might imagine somebody who his girlfriend says, "Do these jeans make me look fat?" And he says, "Well, yes, a little bit. Did you try them on before you bought them?" And then is confused as to why he is in trouble. And so I've nicknamed our objective spatial people the smug assholes. Now, you'll notice that nobody gets an out here. None of these are flattering names. And so the smug asshole is very concerned about doing what should be done and communicating with perfect precision and honesty, not caring about people's feelings. The prima donna will care about people's feelings when they feel like it, and maybe not when they don't. Now, as we move up to the objective time, these are people who are making long-term plans, want everything to be executed as planned, and are very concerned about resource efficiency and usage. And, people's feelings are just resources that fit into the long-term calculation of whether something will work or not. And if those feelings don't happen to contribute to the achievement of the long-term plan, well, then they have to go. And so I've nicknamed our temporal objective people heartless bastards. And our subjective time people, these are people that are very concerned about how they and everybody else will feel over time. Very concerned about all of the subjective feelings. And so they're very concerned about saying or doing anything that might cause somebody to be angry with them or to be hurt. And they're looking at the future consequences of saying exactly what they think or doing what they want to do. And so they're always kind of reserved and trying to ensure everybody is at peace with everybody else. And so I've called them the spineless panderers. So you notice that in the diagonals, we find the opposites, or what Jung would call our shadow. So the smug asshole is saying exactly what they think, even if it's going to piss everybody off. And the spineless panderer won't say what they think up to the brink of death, almost. Or, you might have experienced this or witnessed this in somebody else, where one of these lovely spineless panderers seems like the nicest person. They're in a very stable relationship. And then one day, a volcano erupts. And everybody is confused. Where did that come from? You're not like that. What happened to you? And what the reality is that it's been crammed down inside for so long that at some point it becomes unsustainable and erupts. So, and you see here that the same opposite principle. The prima donna is doing what they want to do in the present, as opposed to optimizing everything for the achievement of some long-term plan, which must on paper be justifiable to other people. So I happen to, I guess, have gotten an early start thinking about these things because in my family of 4, we have one of each. And so I grew up with all of these fun conflicts. And then I got into to school and university, and I found all these same conflicts repeating. It's like I was meeting the same people over and over, and they were having the same arguments over and over with different words around different circumstances. And then I got into business, and it went off the charts. All these patterns repeated with much higher consequences, much higher stakes. And if you look, for example, if you imagine some engineering team, often, frequently, predominated by smug assholes, and they're dealing with a VC who is a heartless bastard. And you might, if you've been in a startup before that built technology, you might recognize this particular pattern. Well, but the right way to build this technology is to do this. If we hack together these other pieces, it will be suboptimal, and we'll have to fix it later. And but it's better to just take an extra year to make the product perfect, because we can't launch it until it's perfect. And the heartless bastard VC is like, well, boys, we don't have that much time. You need to get something that is less than perfect. And you might get a big argument. The blockchain community is sort of built around this idea of this perfect immutable ledger that has no holes. And so much of the blockchain community is optimizing for the best way to rebuild this system. And we have hundreds of wonderful blockchains now, all trying to do the best possible optimization of an accounting system. Few of those blockchains have found use cases for actual practical reality, because they're focused on doing things the exact right way and not necessarily about the pragmatic execution of a business plan. Very common problem. You might also recognize this one. design team says, but I like it this way. And some marketing expert says, yeah, but it doesn't test well. Yeah, forget your tests. I know this is going to work. You see? Over and over and over, the same patterns are going to emerge. And it doesn't matter if it's your love life or your business life or your relationship with your friends or your family. You're going to see these same patterns over and over. And so, from my perspective, we can't really fight human nature. It's a pretty monstrous thing. We can redirect it. It's sort of like a river. We can cross the river, we can move the river another way, but we actually don't want the river to dry up. That would be the worst possible thing. And the same is true with us humans. We are, each of us, a unique river flowing and cutting a channel in the world. It's messy. We make mistakes. We say and do things we later come to regret. And one could say, this human nature thing is just a big problem. But it's also the source of all of our creativity, all of our inspiration, all of our drive and passion to do the things that we do. We don't want it to dry up. We don't want to become robots. It wouldn't be optimal. It wouldn't be interesting. Life would be terribly boring. But at the same time, we are constantly engaged in stressful relationships with people we care about. And this is the key thing, is that most of our conflicts with other people are with the people we care about the most. The people in whose interests it is highest that we not have these disagreements and problems. And so the answer to it is, how do we understand our individual fragments that we're perceiving of reality? How do we look at those of others and start piecing them together? But this takes a lot of effort and a lot of time. And very few people are willing to engage in the level of honesty with themselves, even more than with other people, that's required to understand at a granular level why you do what you do when you get up in the morning. Each of us has this sort of self-executing law that when we wake up, it kicks in and is driving us to do things. How many of you think that you have total control over your actions? That you get up and everything you do in the day, you decided to do? How many of you think that? Yeah, it's almost inconceivable to think that anybody has even a tiny amount of control over this. And the reason that we are under the delusion that we do is that we feel like we have this active, empowered will. Because, I decided to get up and go make that cup of tea. You sort of did and didn't. Like there's a set of perception. Like why would somebody else in the exact same situation, and maybe let's say even the exact same physical sensations, not get up and go make that tea? For example, one of it might be that it's not the appropriate time of day to make a tea. And the heartless bastard was, well, this is not the time. I don't drink coffee in the afternoon. And I want coffee in the afternoon. But I know that if I drink it, I won't sleep. And I fight myself throughout the afternoon not to drink coffee. And so for the most part, I just don't drink it. But I have a friend and business partner who, it doesn't matter what time of day, he knows it will cause him not to sleep that night, and he just doesn't care. He's like, well, I'll suffer with that tonight, but right now I want this coffee. You might imagine where he appears on the chart. And the thing is, you might say, but in that situation, that sounds like this is better than this. In that situation, maybe. But let me give you another example. Imagine you're building a team, and you have a heartless bastard founder who has this perfect plan that they've set out, and they're trying to optimize the plan so that every step in the sequence is known to minimize possible failures. But then, well, when is the right time to pick up the phone and call a potential customer? Way before that plan is perfected. But, well, what if I don't know exactly what I'm selling yet? I can't do that. Well, let's call and try anyway. Oh, no, that doesn't, but then I won't get another chance with them. You see the difference between this sort of impulse to do things that you find down here in this subjective spatial quadrant versus the need for all things to be justifiable. If you needed everything to be rational and justifiable, no startup would ever exist or succeed, ever. The unpleasant truth that we're, especially since the Enlightenment, we're not inclined to embrace is that we are all highly irrational beings. We would really like to think that we're not, but we are highly irrational. And all success in business is based on some level of irrationality at the root. On top of it, hopefully, a nice rational business plan will be built and strategy executed. But the root, the core, the why do I get up and go do this, is always some irrationality. Why do you care about one thing instead of another? You can make up a story. Why you care about this set of problems and not this set of problems. You can invent a story. We're very good at inventing narrative ex post facto. But at the root, there's just something you feel attracted to about that set of problems. For sure, all of the people that this audience probably looks up to as heroes in the startup world, people like Jobs and Musk and so on, deeply irrational, deeply against what everybody, like all the probabilities. And I mean, Steve Jobs took his irrationality to the point of getting himself fired by Apple's board, and then going off and doing something again, and doing things the same way as he did before, in a very important sense. And he eventually gets brought back. The rational thing to do is to get a job. The rational thing to do is to look around you, see what everybody else is doing, and just sort of stay in line with that. Because your risk of failure is relatively low, but your risk of living is even lower. And the dangers of jumping out and doing things differently are minimized when you understand yourself and the people you're interacting with. You can reduce those risks by engaging in a practice of self and other understanding. Now I guess almost 16 years ago, when I was 16, I started the practice of journaling. And I didn't journal about what I ate that day or who I talked to, but really about my interactions with other people, how I felt about them, what I thought other people were doing or trying to do, why they said what they said, and why I said what I said. When I found myself after an event with other people where I did something I wish I hadn't done, well, why did I do it then? Not how do I feel about it now, but what was at the root of that? And page after page after page, day after day after day, for half of my life, I have tried to engage as honestly with myself as possible. And I have one of my key rules for journaling is make sure you assume that you're going to burn all of your journals before you die. That absolutely nobody will ever read them. Because the minute that you start doing this process and you imagine someday somebody might discover these things, you're going to be performing. And so much of our life is just performance. We are playing a role on a stage. We are trying to mask some set of laws both with these generalities and with the specificities that are unique to each of you, trying to cover it up with our performance in life. And we're putting on a show for other people and, importantly, for ourselves. And so if you're going to try to do this, if you're going to try to come to some deeper understanding of what's going on with you, you have to assume nobody is going to read it. You're the only audience. And then you have to be brutally honest. You have to say the things that you would never want anybody to hear you saying. How many of you have ever written something in ink on paper that you said, oh no, if somebody ever saw that I wrote that, they would lose respect for me or something? Have you ever done, few of you? Now how many of you have thought something that you said, if somebody knew I was thinking this, I would be embarrassed, they would lose respect for me, etc.? Okay, good, more hands. I highly recommend doing it in ink. It will change your perception about the thoughts. Rather than just quickly dismissing them, you say, well, there must be something there. Rather than just judging it as good or bad, you say, well, this is coming from something real, something personal. What is it? Where is it coming from? You may not be able to answer it. You may write the same thing over and over for days, weeks, months, even years. You might find a thought that you had now comes back to you in 5 years. And with a journal, you have a sort of accounting of your mind. I really do look at it as an accounting ledger of my mental and emotional states. And you can go back and check. You can thumb through and look for key words and say, I did have that feeling 3 years ago. What were the circumstances around it? And you can look. You can say, wow, this is the same thing that's happening to me now, and I feel the same way. I bet this sounds like a lot of work. Does anybody think this sounds like a lot of work? How much time do you put into caring about how you dress or your appearance? A lot of time? And we have one hand here, very quick to go up. Lots of self-honesty. I like it. How much of your time do you think about the food that you eat? Oh, quite a bit of time. How much time do you think about what you're going to do for a leisure activity on the weekend? More time. We waste a lot of time on frivolous, trivial things. Things that don't improve our own mental health or physical health, things that don't improve the state of our relationships, and therefore, things that don't improve our quality of life, but are rather just distractions from the problems that we don't want to take the time to solve. And all of those other things are going to be more enjoyable and more fulfilling for you if you actually solve the human problems that exist in your life. So, as they have not left the timer up here, I don't know how much time I'm supposed to be speaking. It disappeared. What time is it? Okay, great. So I would like to, you might notice I'm a very temporal person. I was like, okay, I think I'm running out of time. And it's true. So what I want to do is to leave you with a little bit of inspiration about this human journey, because a lot of people in the startup world are so focused on the immediate success of the current project and invest their whole life in that success. And there's no other way to do it. You cannot succeed building a startup if you don't go all in. It's impossible. But at the same time, all in does not mean your identity, your thriving in life. It means your effort, your energy, your time, but it doesn't mean you. And so many people in this world get trapped in self-immolation of the mind, of injuring the self because, I'm not succeeding, I'm not getting this as much as other people are getting, and I'm a failure, and it becomes self-defeating. And the vast majority of your startups, those of you who are working on them now, are going to fail, period. And then you have to decide if you're going to try another one. And this desire for life in and of itself is key to being able to get up, dust yourself off, and start again. So I want to leave you with what I hope are some inspiring words from Henry Wadsworth Longfellow in a poem called A Psalm of Life. And the word psalm literally means a song of praise. So this is Longfellow's praising of life. Tell me not, in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream. For the soul is dead that slumbers, and things are not what they seem. Life is real, life is earnest, and the grave is not its goal. From dust thou art, to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul. Not enjoyment and not sorrow is our destined end or way, but to act that each tomorrow finds us farther than today. Art is long and time is fleeting, and our hearts, though stout and brave, still, like muffled drums, are beating funeral marches to the grave. In the world's broad field of battle, in the bivouac of life, be not like dumb-driven cattle, be a hero in the strife. Trust no future, however pleasant. Let the dead past bury its dead. Act in the living present, heart within, and God o'erhead. Lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime, and departing, leave behind us footprints on the sands of time. Footprints that perhaps another, sailing o'er life's solemn main, a forlorn and shipwrecked brother, seeing, may take heart again. Let us then be up and doing, with a heart for any fate, still achieving, still pursuing, learn to labor and to wait. Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions? Yeah. Any questions? I do offer relationship advice as well. It's fine. Anybody?
Do your model has a name? How to find it in the internet?
Yeah, I'm working on that. I will hopefully be publishing a book in the next 12 months. There's a lot more than is on the board, but normally this is about a 6-hour workshop. So I tried to give you as maximally compressed version as I could, but I'm working on it. You can also follow me on Twitter, Facebook, or something and communicate with me there, and I'm happy to talk about it more. So, but yes, I'm trying.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Everybody is hungry for barbecue. Okay, thank you all so much.
Yeah.